Welcome to Financial Freedom for All, where we help you master your money and live your dream one episode at a time. Today we'll be talking about strong mind, strong mission, mental health and the entrepreneurial journey with our amazing guest, Senior Vice President Barbara Anderson-Stewart. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'd have to actually explain that you're not just a Senior Vice President, you're a founder of Genistar. So can you explain a little bit about that, about where it all began?
Absolutely, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me here today. And yes, it's been one of those incredible journeys, really. I was involved quite a few years ago, as you mentioned. In fact, it's about my 20th year this year of being part of this journey.
Wow, congratulations.
Well,
that's
thank
incredible.
you. Thank you. I know I don't look like that. You know, I look like I'm only 16, but that's okay. I'll take compliments. But yes, back in 2004, I was working full-time as an accountant in the City of London. I was working part-time 2 evenings a week. I was going to college 2 evenings a week, single mother with a 3-year-old. And a good friend of mine rang me up and asked me if I could come along to a meeting with her one Saturday morning. And in fact, you know, when you don't know that you need something, I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm okay. You know, I could pay everything. You know, I had the nice car and had the nice house and everything. So I didn't think I was needing anything. But after a lot of persuasion and pushing, I went along. And at the end of the presentation, I was completely immersed. I was like, you know, to the guy who started the presentation, I said, how do I get to your position and how much is it going to cost to me? And yes, I did become I'm an executive vice president. Back then we were called regional vice presidents.
Okay.
I became a regional vice president in 5 months of joining. So from joining in December up until the May when I got my promotion. And yeah, it's a little bit of a crazy time, really, because you're trying to bring up a 3-year-old and, you know, being single as well. And then we got the news a couple of years later that the company was closing.
Gosh.
And a group of us got together and decided, yeah, we wanted to continue this mission and this crusade. And I wanted to be a part of that. I did get the chance to go to Canada with the company to continue with them in Canada. But for me, my home was here. My daughter was here. I was going to uproot her from everything that she knew. And so I decided, you know what? I'll go fight for something else. I'll go start from scratch with something. I knew nothing about whether or not we were even going to get the company going or whether or not we were going to get approval. And yeah, so here I am.
That's amazing.
Here I am.
I think we definitely need to mark your 20-year anniversary. That's
Yes.
definitely something
Yes.
to celebrate.
Yes.
So if we can go back, can you explain what was going through your mind when City Solutions said that they were closing? How did you cope with that?
Tears. I remember I was on my way to see a client and my vice president rang me up and he said to me, can you come to the office now? And I was like, no, I can't come now. I'm actually driving to Essex. And I'm a little bit of sometimes being an uncoachable person. I was like, yeah, but I need to go see this client. And he goes like, you're not listening. I said, you need to come to the office now. He wouldn't tell me why. And I remember coming into the office and he said, look, really sorry, the company is closing. You know, he was going to move back to the US and he kind of explained, you know, kind of why this was happening. And I just remember sitting there crying because I was saying to myself, I'm completely sold. I had made a commitment to myself in 2005, January, when I walked out of my job. So I sold the business 2004, December. January, I gave up my part-time job. And by February, I went full-time. So for me, I had given up. In fact, I walked out of my job without giving any notice. So now I've lost all my years of experience. I can't go back to being an accountant. And I had said to myself, I'd rather die before I go and work for someone else. So it was like, what am I going to do? I think maybe that was more the tears, more than the company closing. It was like, so what am I going to do? Now I've got to go say yes to somebody and, you know, follow their journey and the path that they've created, not the one that I want. So honestly, I remember crying my heart out. I just could not believe that I was so sold on this. And, you know, and being a person of faith as well, I was like, no, it can't be. It can't be happening. You know, I kind of was told, I mean, I don't know, in my mind that this was going to be where I wanted you to be. So why suddenly now this is all going to go pear-shaped? So I remember being in tears and not kind of knowing what I was going to do. Literally.
So was there a big gap between City Solutions closing and Jeff having that get together where he was like, let's go for it with Genistar?
Do you know? That's a very good question. So we had already booked for the Primerica convention back then to go to the convention that summer. So we had the conversation before we even went to before we went to the convention. I got a call from my lovely colleague, Steve Jenkins. How could we ever? I mean, I always tell him that, I owe this to him. Because yes, he rang me up and he said, can we meet for coffee? We're thinking of starting a company and I'd love to have a chat with you about it. So I met up with him and signed back then. We didn't even have applications, and he got me to sign a Form A, which I still got a copy of, I think, to this day on my back office. And he said, look, we want to get together. So by the time we went to the convention in the summer, because that was about kind of May-ish time, we were told. And so by the time we went to the convention, we had already started having chats about it. And I remember at the time, my vice president, and I should have kept the paper. Actually, they passed to me a piece of paper. His wife passed me a piece of paper at the convention and said, can your lot in the UK put on a show like this? And I clearly remember her handing me the piece of paper. And I think that for me was like, okay, now that you say that, I'm more going to go fight with these guys to make this happen. So, that the company got set up, but we still had no business. So you imagine during the entire summer, we had no income, we had nothing going on. All we had was training, and we still hadn't even had approval from the FCA back then. Actually, it was the FSA back then. You might remember. So we had not been even, given approval by them. So we got approval about November. So if you think from May to November, we had no income. We had no income during that period of time. So yes, we had that massive gap of no income coming in. So
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what got you through that? Because I think I've heard that when you're made redundant, or if something like that in your life can happen, it's similar to the kind of a death almost. You go through kind of the stages of grief. You have the shock, you have the anger, you kind of, it's a bit of a roller coaster. So what got you through? What inspired you to carry on going? Because that's a really difficult position to put yourself especially when you've got a 3-year-old to look after. So.
Absolutely. And by the way, she was going to school private, so there was private school fees as well.
Gosh.
Yes, there were the school fees as well. So I think what I did first, I went along to the convention, as I said, because I'd already paid. So it was real fun. And again, that kind of cemented for me what it was that I was going for. And then I also read on that flight going over, I read Art Williams' book, Coach, because I hadn't read it all the time. I had a signed copy because they had an incentive for signed copies of the book prior. So I had a signed copy by him, and I read it on the plane. That was when I was really grasping what he had been through. And I was thinking, okay, so it was never meant to be like this really super smooth journey, but you got to be believing. And then I say to myself, you know what? What's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't work, and I got to go find something else to do. Now that I've got the experience, having studied to become an accountant, I could just go do my exam and still find some financial services business to do. So I was, kind of sold out on the belief that it was going to happen. But then I took myself on a trip. When we went to Atlanta, I decided I'm going to fly to Jamaica. Then I flew back to Atlanta and then came back to the UK. And then reality set in. Now you've got no income. You've got to get to work. But I think what was so good about it was the two co-CEOs then, I included Jeff Letts. Was the training. We got together, pretty much every week we were still having training. So I think that is really good, I would say, for anybody who's going through that kind of process, is to stay connected with the right people, because I know there were some people who kind of dropped off and no longer had an interest, and people who were so upset about it that they never moved on. They just kind of thought it was just unbelievable. It was cruel. It was all of that. And so, hanging around the people like Jeff, who said, look, I'm going to continue. I'm going to hang in there with you guys. I made a commitment to you guys. I want to hang in there with you guys. That, I think, kept us. That kept us. Jeff's belief. And I share it with my team all the while. I say to them, Jeff didn't have to stay, And I think sometimes, we're human beings as well. And so at times, we all fall out with each other sometime, And it's not because we don't love each other, because we're human beings. But I always remind people of that commitment, of him deciding to actually stay. So that kept us. That really kept us. His belief kind of kept us believing throughout that time.
That's incredible.
Yes.
Okay. So in the last 20 years, what would you say that you've learned as far as, if you look back, if you could give if you could go back 20 years, What advice would you give to yourself at that point?
I would actually say to myself that you've got belief, but you've got to do more. I realized that belief on its own without a lot more action. And you know, I look back on my life and realize that maybe even now I'm only giving 20%. If I could add 50% and go to 30% of my abilities, how much better I would have been. So one other thing was in terms of getting others on the journey, I used to talk to people, but I didn't see the power of getting more people engaged to come on that journey with me. I was very much the kind of person that, okay, I tell you, if you don't want to come, goodbye, I'm gone. That's how I operate. You know, I was told once that I'm a little bit of, you know, those marathons where you have, you know, the pace setter. I always run off. I don't even know if the race has started. I'm like running off and go like, oh, it hasn't started. So, you know, if we had like, you know, if we were in like a track event and, you know, I'd always be breaking the rules. I'd always run off before the gun goes and I'd be saying, oh, false start. I'd be the false starter every time because I always want to move. So that was kind of my thing. I'd have said to myself, focus more on developing people, focus more on giving people the chance to grow. Currently, I'm reading Developing Leaders Around You.
Okay.
And I realized that I can do most things myself. And because I can do most things myself, I don't think that might be that, you know, it's such a great thing that I'm just also wonderful at delegating because I can do it. And I'm thinking the time I'm spending teaching you to do it, I could do it myself. So I would have become a better delegator. It meant that I'd have developed more leaders during that time. And my business would have been further along. Would I have been more coachable? Yes. And I realized that being coachable doesn't necessarily mean you're conforming. It means that you're open to wisdom, you're open to other voices, you're open to filtering more of what you're hearing instead of locking out everything totally. And I'm that kind of person. If I don't want to hear it, I'll tune it out. And I could be watching TV and tune out somebody having a conversation with me. I could have a conversation with someone and tune out the TV. I'm able to do that. I'd have been able to listen more and be a better person. I think that for me would have developed me a lot more than I'm actually at. And I've had lots more people on the journey with me.
Lovely.
Yes.
So what advice would you give somebody that joined your team that was in the same situation as you were 20 years ago with no income and a little person to look after and not in a good place?
Yeah. I think one of the thing about it is that is something that comes internal. And I talk to my daughter all the time about external factors. Your life cannot be determined and the places you go cannot be determined by external factors. It's got to be that internal setting. So the first thing I would say is, how tough are you? And I'd ask more what ifs. I'd ask, what if this happened? How are you going to cope? What if this happens? What if this happened? Because I remember the days when things were so tough, I would go out and not see a client, or my client would say they're there and then they'd blow me out. And I've used up all the petrol and I'm going home not knowing how I'm going to feed my daughter, not knowing how I'm going to pay my bills. And not a lot of people have got that mental toughness to say, it is going to be better. I wake up every morning and I'm pretty sure the devil goes like, damn, she's up again. I mean, you know, but, you know, I am that kind of person that I don't get fazed easily. And things will knock me. And my thing is, I'd say, what if? How will you? You got to structure this out to say, okay, if I can't feed my child, what am I going to do? Am I going to go send him to their grandmother? And there was one thing I think I was really fortunate to have my mom that, you know, even the time I know she was like, go back to work. What are you doing? Go back to your job, girl. You're talking you don't have no money when you can get a job. What are you talking about? But I know that she would never, ever let my daughter not eat. She would pretty much want to say, okay, you can starve, but I'll take your daughter. It's up to you to not eat and go have beans and toast or water, but your child would not starve. So you also got to think about who is in your network. And a lot of times that network is so small because people don't believe in the journey with you. And you've got to start asking yourself, am I going to be okay with nobody else believing except me? And that's the thing. And if you can say confidently that you're going to do it, and that's not to say that sometimes you're not going to doubt, you know. There are going to be times when at night you're lying in your bed and you're thinking, what on earth have I done? So I would encourage people to have some savings because I had none. when I went out. I would encourage people to say, have a bit of money. And I was given a very good book. And I encourage, whenever people talk to me about going in the full-time in the business, I always encourage them to read this book that my vice president gave me. It was a book called The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. And that got me through. There were lots of times when things got tough and I would say, okay, this is the wasteland part of my journey. Okay, these are the giants fighting me now. And it was pretty much, I think it's very much an entrepreneurial story that is written in that book. And that's kept me. And I'd always encourage people who say they want to go full-time or this is where they're going to plant their stake. I'll say, okay, read The Dream Giver and tell me if you're happy to go on that journey. Yes. Yes.
I feel like you're such an open book, and it's lovely and it's really amazing that you're sharing this story.
Yes.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs about showing the vulnerability and their own stories with their team?
You know, I had my training session yesterday evening, and I said to my team that a lot of times as leaders, we only show the bright things. And one of the things Art Williams always said, leader can feel hurt but not show hurt. And that's always stuck with me. However, I realize that there's a balance. Because unfortunately, your people feel that you don't have problems. If you're just always bright and bubbly, there's always things. Now, naturally, I'm not going to say to somebody, hey, my bank account is empty. I can't put petrol in my car, because the thing about those things is that it's not encouraging for people who want to go on the journey. There are a few people who might say, well, there's going to be days when I don't have petrol in my car. But one of the things about it is, if you are not able to show hurt as a leader, I think it's a little bit false. You got, I heard Gareth Morgan said once that we had a session with him, and he said, look, as a leader, you've also got to show your people that you hurt, you feel pain, you bruise your knees at times. And that's one thing we don't know. And so one of the things I've gotten better at is saying to my people, hey, I might not say, might be down to the last point, but I also say I'm going through a tough time. If in my business, things are a bit flat, I'll say, man, things are a little bit flat at the moment. And what I'm working on at the moment is to move it to the next level. So instead of just talking about just the negative, as an entrepreneur, you got to start thinking about, how do I move it? Because staying here is not going to fix the situation. Is, okay, I'm here. I got to recognize that I'm here. But what I've also got to start doing is start figuring out a strategy to move from here. Because you could stay here. It's like, my vice president, when I started, I didn't have my £140 background checking fee. And the guy said to me, I paid him a check. And then I rang him and said, don't bank the check. And you know what he said to me? He said, if your car broke down on the motorway and you had no breakdown cover, would you sleep there? And I said, no. He said, if I gave you the key to a brand new car and you had fined £150 to go up to the Midlands to pick it up, would you fine £150? And that was my first lesson in being an entrepreneur. I mean, I'd never read Rich Dad Poor Dad at a time, because they also got me to read that. But it was just two things about, one, if I'm giving you something positive for £150, would you find it? And if you were going to feel pain for not having £150 by something negative happening, would you figure it out? So that got me thinking about, how do I create a way? And it's always, as an entrepreneur, is always thinking a step ahead. It's like when you're driving, you're not just looking at the car in front of you, because it's the car in front of him that might break. So you always got to be thinking 2 steps ahead. So for example, when I'm planning my diary, I'm thinking, gosh, if I only plan for this week and don't plan for next week, when next week comes, what is going to happen? So it's also being able to think ahead as to potentially what could happen. And that's not to say that you're being negative. It's saying that you recognize that things are positive, but there's always the potential for things to go wrong. So I always, even with my team, I always encourage them to say, hey, guys, listen, if this happens, then, be prepared. Be prepared, yes.
Lovely. And being your own boss in Genistar is one of the appeals.
Yes.
But I can imagine it also comes with quite a lot of responsibility and stress.
It does.
So how do you manage that? How have you ever experienced burnout, for example, where you get so many no's and you're trying to get the yeses.
And you start hating people.
Yeah.
I don't hate anybody. I'm always like, I don't like them. Oh, you're just horrible. So one of the things about it is, I think everybody should learn to be able to laugh at themselves. It is so important that you can laugh at yourself.
I love that.
And if you can't laugh at yourself, that's a problem. You got to be able to look at it and think, what did you do that? What did you say that? And you just laugh about it, because you can't go back in time and fix it. So one of the things that I do is I I'm a visual person. What do you call it? Where people, but you love to write, you read things. I don't get a chance to read as much as I used to, but you've got to find a place that works for you. My special place has always been Tower Bridge.
Oh, wow.
So I would go there, park my car, and just sit on a bench and just watch life go by.
Oh.
I'm not even listening to music. There's a sense of calm just sitting there. And you got to find a place which is your calm place.
I love that.
Yeah. So you take it away from everything, because sometimes in the mess that you're in, you cannot see what's going on. You just find somewhere and go and sit and just be with yourself.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really good
Yeah,
advice.
it could be a room in your house, as again, Gareth Morgan said, a change of place and a change of pace will bring a change in perspective.
They always say exercise is really good, but some
Yes.
people, that's my idea of
Yes,
a nightmare.
exactly.
If someone said, "Oh, you're stressed, go for a run," I would get
know.
stressed.
Or go iron. Oh, ironing is therapeutic. I'm thinking like, what?
No,
That's
thank you.
work. I don't want to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's my calm place. For some people, it might be listen to some music. I used to love listening to music at night. And one of the things is, Kathy, I sleep 4 hours a night. It doesn't matter how you cut it. The most sleep I'll ever get is 4 hours.
Gosh.
If I go to bed at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be awake by 6. So even though I'm not a morning person, which is why I don't want to get up. So, but the thing about it is, I love raindrops. So I listen to raindrops and I'm there and I'm just hearing it. And I love that little background, that white noise. So what is it that works to kind of give you peace? You got to find peace in the midst of everything. An old rep from City came to my office recently. She brought me a book, How to Be an Introvert in the World That Never Stops Talking. Yeah. And it's funny that people just so into your life at times, but you got to find your quiet place where, and sometimes he's not even thinking about the issue, about what is going on. He's not looking for resolution at that point. It's a moment of calm for peace. That's what you're looking for, that peace. He's not looking for resolution. It's for peace. And when you step out of that peace, you're then having more clarity as how to move forward. Yeah.
I can imagine it would be good to just mark that on the calendar every time you go to Tower Bridge.
Yes.
Because then life will get in the way and you can go, actually, the last time I was at Tower Bridge was in March.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. And that is a very good point, actually. I recently, I sit a lot. So now I've got myself a stand-up desk, and I've been getting, because I've been getting like this kind of pain along the back of my thigh, and my physiotherapist said to me, he said, your muscles are just tight, you just, so I had stopped getting my massage, my sports massage once a month. So I'm back to getting my sports massage. And because it's calming, it's relaxing. So it's finding something that works for you. It could be doing your nails. And for me, doing my nails is not even peace, because my phone doesn't stop going. I think maybe the only peace I get is doing my lashes, because my eyes are closed. I can't look at the phone and I fall asleep. All right. So it's finding what works for you for that moment of peace, where it's not thinking about the problem. It's about looking for peace and calm to find the capacity to move forward.
I love that.
Yes.
And apart from your family, which it sounds like you have had an amazing support network, how's the Genistar support network? What does that look like?
Do you know, my daughter said to me, she said, Mommy has got no friends except at Genistar. And I was thinking about it. I was saying, who's my friends? Well, most of my friends, I've been trying to figure out who are my friends who are not in Genistar. So my friends are in Genistar, and all my Genistar people are my friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the people that I'll call up and have a laugh. I mean, my very good friend, Angelina Hall, I so funny, I was reading a message from her earlier. It was her birthday a couple of days ago, and I rang her up. And I started singing, it doesn't make much sense. There ought to be a law against. And she just texted me this morning and said, what happened to my song this morning? I mean, so you just got to, and it's not, I know Ange because of Genistar. Got my friend Janelle. All of these are people. I mean, my team, Juliet, all of these guys, they're all part of the family, my leaders. I can call them up. They've got their kids. And we're like, hey, Shan, how is Cam? And so you got all of these people. These are people who, if I'm going through a moment, I can call them and say, hey, and have a laugh. Or I'll be going for my walk in the evenings, because I tend to walk in the evenings. And I could spend an hour chatting to one of these guys. They're my company. So my Genistar family is just awesome. And I think what's good about it is not just my team. I call Bevin, I call Alan Palmer, and we just talk forever. We were just joking recently about Alan. So by the time you say bye to Alan, he's already off the phone. Alan don't get, he's like, okay, bye, bye, bye. But we got these awesome leaders in the business that you can pick up the phone and you can have a conversation with, and you can tell them all the worries and stress that you're going through. And, they don't offer a solution, but just getting it in the air.
That's
just
hard.
amazing.
That's
Yes.
great. So what message would you give to entrepreneurs listening right now who are silently struggling?
You got to find somebody, and sometimes it's not going to be somebody in the business. And it's a very funny thing, because one of the things I learned on the journey was, because I wanted people to be part of my business, I didn't want to tell them the pains I was going through, because now they're not going to join my business because, like, oh my God, you're struggling. We don't want that to happen to us. And then the people who are in the business, you also don't want to share it with them, especially if they are in your immediate team. And one of the things I would say is find somebody who, one, they don't earn from you. Two, you don't earn any money from them, but they're that person who can give you some kind of, as I said, it doesn't have to be a solution, but that just person that you can feel that you can talk to. You just got to be able to do that. And the thing about having that person, and it's hard, because honestly, it took me a while to get to the point to be able to talk about my issues. And I did become a bit of a moaner. I would just go like, I'm moaning. This thing is not working. And it's not about, man, I'm going through a tough time. It was more like a moan. And sometimes people go like, okay, all right, now you finished moaning. What happens? and I just go, yeah, I just wanted to give it to somebody and I'm gone. The thing about it is that when you hand something off, or you're going through a challenge and you hand it off, don't keep carrying it. Just let go of it. It's either going to sort itself or it's going to break you. So you got to make a decision which one you're going to choose. Let it sort itself. That's not to say you're not going to deal with it, especially if it's I haven't paid my mortgage, this month or next month. That's not to say you're going to go like, well, it doesn't matter. It will just happen. You got to actively work towards dealing with the situation, but you also got to recognize that, killing yourself over it is not going to fix it. Anything that can be fixed is not a long-term, so it's not a long-term problem. It's not permanent. Somebody taking your life, that's permanent. To a thing, that might just be a short-term thing. And I guess that might be a terrible explanation, because we don't know what's going on in people's world. But it's always to say that, look, always pause and think, is the decision that I'm going to make today have a permanent solution to something that's only temporary? I remember not being able to pay my mortgage for a while back many years ago when I was with Citi. And I got up every day and went out to see a client, because there's no point of me sitting down and saying, I can't pay the mortgage, so man, that's such a problem. I just had to get up and actively go do something. I just kept myself engaged. I make some money now. Okay, I can pay towards it. But if I just sat there and did nothing about it, I think that's unfortunately what happened to a lot of people. The challenge gets so heavy that they just can't seem to get up. The weight is just carrying them down so much. And so find that little person, and it might not even be people. And I think that's what the beautiful thing about having all of these kind of external companies, that you can just get on the phone and talk to somebody. They don't know you. You don't know them. They can't pass any judgment on you. And even if they do, you don't know them. They don't know you. So they'll just keep it to themselves. It's just to talk to somebody who you can just go, I'm glad I got that out. And being able to move forward. Once you've put it down, just leave it there. Don't carry it again with you from where you've left it. Yeah.
I think at the moment there's so much emphasis on mental health in the UK, since COVID, definitely. Yes. And a lot of people assume that the NHS is the only place that they can go and get appointments, and they're thinking, I'll be waiting for ages. But there's actually so many charities and organisations out there that are available instantly. So they're moving along.
At the moment, I've got Calm on my phone and I've got Headspace, and I think I'm very blessed in a way that things bother me for about 10 minutes. I don't go to my bed angry ever. You can't upset me enough to go to my bed angry. My bedroom and my sleep time is mine. It's not yours. I will not allow you to let me go to my bed angry.
I love that.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. It's not your space, it's mine. So I'm not letting you in that space. And if I get angry at you, it's only about 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, why was I angry again? I've not had to worry about the capacity to be carrying all of that baggage with me. I mean, and I know it's not easy, my daughter and people talk about star signs, and it's not always true. My daughter's birthday is 2 days before mine, and we're totally different. My daughter will carry stuff from she was in primary school. She'll tell you about this thing that happened when I was in primary, or this person. And we always joke about it. And so she goes like, mommy's always saying they're not looking at me. And I know they're looking at me, and I'm going like, I'm always going to, maybe they think you're beautiful. Maybe they think, oh, I love her hair. Maybe they think that I love her shoe. I love her clothes. So it's putting a positive spin on it. If somebody's looking at me, chances because I look nice. I go for my walk and I make sure I look nice. And people, even ladies will say to me, you look lovely today and whatever. So that's also another thing about how you carry yourself, being able to have the light come in as well. It's so easy to get into a dark place, I realize. And it's about allowing that light to come in by forcing yourself to get up and comb your hair. It's like when I was pregnant, I never wanted to have my shower. Honestly, that's just what it was. My hormones were playing. And I've realized sometimes might be in a sense that's what happens to people who going through their mental health challenges. Is like, oh, I don't even want to get out of bed today. It's so hard to do that. But if you can just push yourself, just give yourself just a 5% push. Just, okay, at least let me get up and shower. That's the first thing I think your body goes, okay, I'll cool down a little bit now. Okay, let me comb my hair. It might be just doing one of those things and then do another one and start getting yourself, because one of the things I think, might be is when you force yourself to get dressed and do things, is like your mind start going like, okay, all right, let me get out of this hole that I'm in and start pushing myself into the sunshine instead of staying where I'm at. So, yeah.
Oh, cool.
So Kat, I just want to ask you, you are the mental health person for the company. And what has it been like for you? Because I'm pretty sure that you must have your personal challenges. You're always trying to help everybody else and to carry their issues. How has it been for you? And, we mentioned COVID and the challenges that people have faced since COVID. How has it been for you in order to be able to still remain positive? And is it always okay for you that you're always positive?
That is a really good question. I think, previously, before I had my mental health training, I would be, I thought I was helping people. So I would try and, people come to me with their problems and I'd say, I've been through something like that and I can relate, and I try and help everybody. But then I'm also taking their kind of, and then I go home and say to Tom at home, oh, I'm worried about this person, I'm worried about that. And you kind of have it on your shoulders. That was one of the things I learned at the mental health first aid training, was that it's about listening, as you said before. If you're listening to someone about their problems, try not to talk about your own. You mean it in a good place. You're like, oh, do you know what? I've been through that. You'll be fine.
Yes.
You got this, and it's coming from such a good place. But you're then starting to talk about yourself, and it's complete that person's thinking, oh well, I was trying to share what's happening with me, and now you're talking about yourself.
I can relate, yeah.
And so that was a really powerful tool that I learned, just to actually listen, and not to think, right, I've gone from, human resources manager, so I'm not a counsellor, and that's that. I've got the tools to steer people in the right resources. And there's so many incredible charities and resources out there. People just don't know about them. But yeah, it's more to listen and to pick up on the signs as well, because there's so many things that, what life is stressful, and even stress in itself has a bizarre effects on your mind, your physical health.
Yes.
And knowing, and to be able to look at someone and think, do you know what, I think they're struggling silently.
Yes.
If you rely on people to come to you and say, I'm struggling with A, B, and C, you can signpost them. But if you notice patterns in behaviour and certain things, you can actually approach them and be like, are you okay? Do you want to have a conversation? So, but yeah, I have, it's actually made it easier and less, it's easier to manage, because I'm not I'm here for everybody, but I know how to listen to them properly and also where to lead them. So I'm not trying to counsel them myself.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, would you say though that, today when people say, how are you has just become more of a, hi, how are you? Versus, Kat, how are you?
Yeah.
Do you find that that's what's happening now, where people are just more about it, more, how are you is more of a hi, hello, versus how are you is, how are you doing?
100%. I think it's the whole starting an email with, I hope this finds you well.
Yes.
You think, no, you don't.
Yes.
You're just being polite.
Yes.
I'd love to reply to that
Yes.
one day. Go, actually, I'm not. This
Yes.
is really terrible things have happened, but no.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I do think there's, especially in the UK, I think we're so kind of polite,
Yes.
and it's that superficial kind of, oh, hello, how are you? Nice to, and it is nice to actually, but I think for beyond the how are you, so ask yourself that as well sometimes, like, how am I? Am I all right? Am I thinking about myself instead of trying to make sure everyone else is okay around you, which every single person I believe does.
Yeah.
To actually stop and go, am I being looked after? Am I all right? And the how are yous, absolutely. I think you can, as you said, as an entrepreneur, you've got to balance, vulnerability with getting people to actually want to jump on board with you and be a leader and someone that they can look up to. But then I think people are inspired by you as well. So it's so difficult to balance. But getting to know your team and on a personal level is so important. Spending time with the people that you're working with, because then you can ask when you have to say, are you actually all right?
Yes.
Rather than just how you doing?
Yeah. It's funny, that you say that. And I remember we were at, when I was part of the steering committee, we were in Oxford, and my team was going through kind of a bit of tough time. Everybody had flatlined, nothing was happening. And I remember sitting there thinking, I need to speak to Jeff about what's going on. But then as I was walking up, Gary popped over and said, hey, Barbara, how are you? And I said, you know what, I've got a question for you. And he said to me, there are times in your business, it's called holding. And he says, just hugging your people and saying, how are you doing?
Oh.
And whilst I couldn't physically reach out and hug all my people, I know there were people going through different things and people I hadn't seen in a while. And I literally got home, and the next day I went to the card factory and I bought about a dozen cards. And I literally sat there and wrote an individual message to all of these people and put it in an envelope with a stamp and posted it. And I realized it's something we've also lost the touch for. We just text, hey, how are you? But literally writing something. And I'm always reminded of that because, since I got married, that is something, my husband, I will literally see a card. I go home and there's a card posted to me from him. And I realize it's something we've lost touch with, is actually sitting down and putting pen to paper and saying to somebody, something that might be a good thing, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got other people you're working with, or if you're a leader, to actually handwrite a card and say, hello, this is who I am. And those little cards on somebody's desk just means the world to them. It let them know that you genuinely care because you went to the post office and queued up to buy a stamp, right? To actually post this as well.
Oh, I love that. That's really important. I think in society now, it's such a different world, and we've got so much. It's so easy to communicate. Back in the day, you used to argue over the home phone, and if dad was online, forget about it because you kick him off. So I think some people will have people all around them and be constantly on social media, WhatsApp, family groups, on chats, but they'll feel completely lonely.
Yes. So
I think that's a really, really gorgeous way to let people know that you're going that next step of, I think, it's so important. My partner lost one of his best friends, sadly. He took his own life, and it was 2 years ago now, but the chat was so, if you saw him, you wouldn't think at all that anything was going on in his mind. And Tom says, I was texting him up till the day before he took his own life, and I had no idea.
Yes.
But it was he blames himself for not knowing, but it was that superficial kind of, how you doing, mate?
Yeah.
Oh, how's work going? It was very surface level conversation, which you can't blame Tom for, because that's what we all do constantly. But I love the fact that hopefully that allows people to go, actually, I can go to Barbara because she actually genuinely cares. And it's that next level of asking that question.
And that's one of the things we do in the team as well. If somebody loses a family member, we actually write a card. One of the girls lost her mom, so she never showed up at convention. And so we took a card to convention, and everybody that was in the team at convention, they actually wrote her a message in the card. So, my team is very good at, one of the ladies, her dad's funeral is tomorrow, and it's in Birmingham, so we're not going to go all. But, one of the ladies in Birmingham has bought a card. She's getting flowers, and, we all saying, hey, this is from the team. And I think it's that little thing where, naturally just so many things going on in the world right now. And I guess in our own little space, in our own little way, is to reach out when we can. And one of the things I find is that you reach out, you find that people start reaching back out to you. It's not just a one-way thing. People start going like, how are you doing? And I think that's what I'm really blessed with in my team, that, I've got leaders who will come up and say, Barbara, how are you today? And they genuinely, I've got Fiona, she rang me this morning. She said, how are you today? I don't want to hear about work. Right? How are you? Or she showed up at my house and she said, yeah, I'm spending the day with you. And it's those little things where, we've lost that. And as an entrepreneur and as a leader, I would say is letting your people know that you are there. Give them a call, say hello, and don't talk business. Just, how are you? How's the family? Let me know what's going on. And, sometimes I text people and I'll jokingly say, don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the business. Even when I call my colleagues up and we joke and say, hey, don't worry, I'm not calling you to transfer anybody. It's just to say hi, and I rang a couple of EVPs this morning. It's so funny, one of them texted me back and said, hey, what's up? I was only saying hi. And that's one of the things I also realized. You don't need to be in my downline or anything. I can call you up just to say hello.
Love that.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, and I think what you said earlier about we've got social contracts at the FSC.
Yes.
And one of them is believe the best.
Yes.
And I think that can be helpful if you've got a team member that's not performing or they're not turning up to things, and you instantly think, well, they're not interested.
Yes.
If you believe the best and you think, well, they may have something going on, and they may, and if you've got that relationship with your team, hopefully you would know why they're not there. But if you've got to kind of don't jump to conclusions sometimes, if kind of guess
the bad
people's
the
behavior.
worst exercise you can do is jump to conclusion. Yeah. So yes, do agree.
Okay. I would like to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been I've really respected how vulnerable you've been and how honest you've been, and you demonstrate what it is to be a leader in so many ways, and everyone at the FSC completely admires you, and you've earned that yourself. So it's just, you are amazing, and I really appreciate you spending the time to talk about. It's a difficult subject to talk about, so hopefully, I've enjoyed it. Hopefully you have too.
Well, thank you as well for sharing, because not only it wasn't like a one-way thing. You actually shared as well, and that's really important to me as well. As I said, because most time when people are in the office, you kind of think that they're different, they're not the same like us. They don't understand what it feels like for us. It's really great as well that you can see where we're coming from as well. And so thank you.
No problem.
For that
Thank
as well.
you. Today has been a really fantastic session. If you'd like to hear anything else about anything related to mental health and well-being, please let us know, and we will try and cover as many subjects related to this as possible. But thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today on Financial Freedom for All. Join us next time for more ideas about mastering your money and living the dream.